curious if anyone saw or listened to we do a short talk on a long weekend on Instagram or Facebook. It's a little survey I'm doing here. Anybody see it? There we go. We have a few. Oh, wow. Okay. Guys, it's out there for you. It's out there for you. Well, there were two stories in this short video. By short, I mean 4 minutes long. I'm trying to get them shorter and shorter every time. There was a story about a guy that calls himself on Instagram Sailing with Phoenix. If you've checked it out, cool. If not, check it out. And also the story of the rich young ruler. And one of these characters, the sailor actually, does the hard thing and chooses the adventure. And the other chooses to walk away from the hard thing, and because of that loses out on an adventure. A little bit of a retelling of this. So I came across this person on Instagram. My daughter introduced him to me. I actually don't know his name, but his Instagram name is Sailing with Phoenix. Phoenix is his cat. He quit his job of 13 years, corporate job, sold out all of his 401k, cashed it out, which is retirement in the States, and bought a nice boat, a nice enough boat, I should say, for him to sail from Oregon all the way to Hawaii. He was going to do it in 30 days. And he actually just arrived yesterday. Yeah, you saw that? See, we're tracking him now. We're tracking him. When I started following him, he was at 1 million followers. He's at 1.6. The coolest thing happened to him this week. A plane was flying over him, and this plane dropped something. He's like, look, guys, it dropped something for me. And so he got it, he opened it, and they sent him snacks, and they sent him like some cool things. They sent him a wet bag. And he's like, I think I can keep this. I think this is mine, right? So hilarious. He's a really, really like quirky guy, super nice, and he loves his cat because he brought his cat on him for the trip. And so definitely we're going to hear some more about this guy. But the reason I talked about that story was comparing it to the New Testament story of the rich young ruler who Jesus asks him, he asked Jesus, what do I do to get this life you're talking about? And Jesus says, well, you got to sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and then follow me, and you'll experience it. And he's like, I can't do it. He drops to the ground crying and then walks away sad because he realizes he just can't let go of his riches. Now, this is not any kind of application of you needing to cash out your retirement. This is not what that's about. But it's this, what are we willing to let go of, to drop, to maybe forget about, to maybe put aside so that we can experience something that may be even bigger and better than what we're walking through. So why do I bring that up? Wanted to see who watched it, so it was a little survey on my hand. But also, it kind of leads us to this final conversation that we're going to be having. We wrapped up a series, The Narrow Path, a few weeks ago. And so we were all said and done. It was a series on the Sermon on the Mount. But one thing we did not talk about on purpose were the Beatitudes. The Beatitudes are found in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5 to 7. And we knew we didn't have time to get to them, but we also knew that we just have to revisit them a little bit, kind of like an epilogue. So this is a bit of an epilogue to our series, kind of an extra ending. And even though we find the Beatitudes at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, we're going to add them as bonus content. So not sure if you noticed, but during February and March, if you were here regularly, we actually read them every single week. So we didn't say anything, we just were reading them on a weekly basis. So if you're like, wow, they're reading the same Bible text every single Sunday. Joy knows this because I think she read it twice in that series. She's like, are we doing this again? Yes, we are. Because we sneakily tried to ingrain them in us. That was on purpose. And I think if we can get these 8 things, there's 8 of them, in our bones, under our skin, into our hearts, I think they'll end up showing up in our lives where it actually counts. So I'm going to challenge us to read them as much as possible. There's only 8 verses. You can read them every day. You can read them 2-3 times a week. This week at least, do yourself a favor and read them on Monday and Wednesday and Friday. And I think when you don't know what to pray or what to do when you get quiet with Jesus, read the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5. Because if we let them sink in, we're going to read them in just a second, I think these words from Jesus can not only change us, but they really can change the world around us. They make a difference. Because these words in Matthew 5, they represent the Jesus way as much or more than I think anything we read in the scriptures. I really do. Because they challenge us to be different, to be countercultural, to be subversive, to be thoughtful, to be honest, to be brave, to be attentive, all that. And they're wrapped in love. They are wrapped in the love of Jesus. And I think Jesus uses the Beatitudes to describe a way of life, or, in his words, a blessed life. According to Jesus, the blessed ones aren't who we think they are. You know, when you think about what we consider like blessed, and it's even a hashtag, hashtag blessed, right? It's when something good happens to you, you write that down and you feel good about it or you're grateful for it. I get it. But contrary to popular thought, we don't necessarily seek out blessing, but we are blessed, according to Jesus, if we live this beautifully subversive set of values that Jesus talks about in Matthew chapter 5. Sometimes, even often, we've been led into this version of the good life that's based on what? Physical health, you got lots of money, hopefully, or enough money, positivity, success. I mean, we would all maybe define success differently, but it seems like, society, there's a few standards of what success is, and definitely minimal to no challenges. If we have no challenges in our life, then we're living some kind of blessed life. But following Jesus is actually different. It's having this radical, different scorecard of success. So it doesn't value the same things. And I want you to know this, first of all. God is not opposed to your comfort, all right? So God isn't like, oh, we should make them as uncomfortable as possible. I don't think that's what this is saying. But God also knows the benefit of spiritual disruption. And when something happens in our life that is out of the ordinary, or that kind of like gets our attention, or even brings us a little bit of pain, not that I don't think God sent it, but I do think God uses those things to teach us a lot. So with that in mind, what are these Beatitudes? Some of us have read them a bunch of times. Some of us, you might be hearing them kind of for the first time. If you have an amazing or terrible memory like me, it's going to feel like the first time. I always joke and be like, I love having a terrible memory, because when I read the scripture, it's like, this verse is amazing. So maybe that's you today. Maybe it is. But I think they represent the way of Jesus. So we're going to read it in two different translations, we'll call it. So Matthew 5 says this: Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. They're going to be filled. Blessed are the merciful, because they're going to be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart. They will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers. They will be called children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Our friend Eugene Peterson, the late Eugene Peterson, paraphrased him like this. He says, you're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of God and his rule. You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are, no more, no less. That's the moment you find yourselves proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. He's food and drink in the best meal you've ever eaten. You're blessed when you care, because at the moment of being careful, you find yourselves cared for. You're blessed when you get inside your world, your mind and heart, and you put them right. Then you can see God in the outside world. You're blessed when you can show people how to cooperate instead of compete or instead of fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. And you are blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The last one's always the toughest one. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. This is why I think we should read them all the time. I think so. These values, these character traits, these practices, they are the way of Jesus. They are also different than what some consider happy and blessed. And I think when we live these things out, they not only make things right with us, like inside of us, but I really think they lead us to love others like Jesus loved others, and to make a huge difference in the world. So today's kind of like a bit of a practice of if we were doing devotions together, we would just be basically reading the Beatitudes and seeing what God's telling us. So the first thing Jesus says is, blessed are the poor in spirit. And it's basically a recognition that we need God. The word poor that's used here, that Matthew uses, is this idea of spiritual poverty. Luke, when he writes it, that word actually does lead towards a material kind of poverty. But Matthew, in this text that we're reading, it's a spiritual poverty, which helps us acknowledge that this profound need for God. When this word is used in the Psalms, it's always about our spiritual neediness. The Hebrew word for this is actually lacking. That's what it means. It means you're lacking something. So when you read the word poor in the Psalms, often it's just a reference to you lacking something. And it could be lacking material, lacking spiritual things, lacking whatever. So reading this just idea that blessed are the poor in spirit begs us to ask this question: do I need God? How much do I need God? No matter what's going on, will I always need God? And so Jesus is encouraging these listeners, these first listeners, just to recognize inside them, no matter how good or rough your life is, can you just acknowledge that there's this dependency that you're going to have on God, this spiritual lacking. Then he says, blessed are those who mourn. And this is interesting because people don't like to grieve. People actually kind of repel it. They have a hard time with it. I happen to be someone that is in the grieving world a lot because I connect with people when they are grieving their families and in funeral homes. And it's amazing to see how much it's like they didn't see any of this coming. And see, they don't want to feel those feelings. And then if they do, they want to sit there for a long time as well. But in a world where we hide our true feelings and we always want to put a good face, I get it, Jesus invites us here to kind of feel what we're feeling. So he's saying, blessed are you if you've lost something and you have something to grieve about. Grieve it, mourn it. So grieve what you lost, lament what's been broken or something that's been taken from you. Maybe even sometimes in our lives we look back and we didn't even have a chance to grieve something that happened in our past. We look back and something terrible happened or there was some trauma and the people in that era just didn't understand that we needed to actually take time to process it. And so now as an adult you're looking back and I actually never grieved this. I never got a chance to say that sucks. No one ever wanted to hear me say this was terrible, that shouldn't have happened. This person stole something from me. This person hurt me. I lost someone at this young age and we weren't given the chance. And Jesus in this beautiful way is saying, you're blessed if you can be honest about your loss. Because we don't have to sugarcoat what's going on. We can be honest, feel the pain that something's brought us. Now, this doesn't mean that we can't balance it with joy. We can, actually. I think grief and joy can be friends. I really do believe that. You too, Joy. Sorry. Yeah. But how do we do that when we see them as two sides of a coin? We can recognize what's hurt, what's broken, what's painful, what we've lost, while at the same time saying, God, is there anything here that brings me joy? Can I find something in this moment? And then we kind of balance those two things together. But Jesus gives permission. Not only permission, he says, you're blessed if you can grieve this, if you can mourn, if you can lament. And I think one thing the church has not done well, the church in general, like our church, other churches just in general, is we don't give people enough permission to grieve. Most of the Psalms are Psalms of someone that's really upset and sad, right? And so it's good to read those things, not because they're necessarily reflecting what you're reflecting in the moment, but it reminds you, hey, not everyone's having a good time here, right? And Jesus says, blessed are you if you can grieve. Then he says, blessed are you who's meek. This is for me the strongest one of all these practices. Meekness, I think, is kind of a hidden power that's under control. It's this beautiful, humble trust that someone has. Meekness is gentleness at its best, and it's most pure. And sometimes people might think that being gentle gets you trampled on. Would you agree that sometimes maybe you feel that way? And we've been told that, we've been taught that. We see it in movies, in shows, in workplaces, in whatever. But in reality, gentleness that comes through meekness can change the world. When someone walks in to a room and exudes a gentleness about them, something beautiful happens in that moment. It takes humility. And Jesus says, blessed are you if you're one of those kinds of people. Then he goes on to this and he says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst. He doesn't stop there. He says, hunger and thirst for something, for righteousness. So if you're like me, you know what it means to hunger and thirst for like good food. I'm a bit of a, I might be a bit of a food snob. I don't mean that in like a ritzy, rich way. I mean like I feel like my life is too short to eat bad burgers or to drink like terrible coffee. So I'm like, if I'm gonna buy coffee, I want it to be a good one, right? That's just me. But here, Jesus might be telling me, Jonathan, that I have to hunger and thirst for justice and for righteousness. So much more than I hunger for fresh cut fries or really good espresso. I'm still gonna ask the waitress or waiter, like, are the fries fresh cut? I'm still gonna ask that. But God is saying, John, you gotta go a step further here. What you really need to hunger and thirst for is that broken things in the world are made right. Is that something that is off can be brought back. If something that's been hurt and broken, you're part of bringing that back together. In Luke chapter 4, Jesus says that he came for this very purpose. He says he came to free captives. He came to feed the hungry. He came to give sight to those who can't see. He came for those that felt so imprisoned and stuck to be let go. And he came to love the marginalized and forgotten. That's what righteousness is. That's what justice is. Righteousness is it's something that's right. It's something was broken and you're seeking for it to be made right. Justice is something that was not right or was wrong and then you're making it just. You're bringing love to a place where there was no love. You're bringing gentleness to a place where there was only meanness. You're bringing joy to a place where there was only sadness. And so Jesus is saying, you're blessed when you hunger and thirst to make things right in the world. That's why we need to read this on a regular basis. Then he goes to this. He says, blessed are those who are merciful. Because our world seems to be dominated by meanness, by angry and selfish and bully leaders. And I'm not going to call out names, but it's hard because sometimes we feel like we're in this current and we want to do well, or we want to like move up in a job, or we want to, get to a certain place in our life. And we've seen that some people have gotten there through what? Through being mean, through being angry, through bullying their way through. And so Jesus here says the total opposite. He said, no. The happy life, the blessed life, the people that are going to experience that is the people that are doing something that's almost forgotten, which is being merciful. Old Testament text, Micah 6:8 says this: we need to love mercy. Love mercy. And the more we practice this, the more we look like our Heavenly Father. That's what the text says. A spiritual leader was asked if they regret anything about their life, like they spent lots of time in, let's say, parish ministry or church ministry or spiritual kind of leadership. And the one response they gave was this: I should have risked God's mercy more than I did. That's what they said. I should have risked God's mercy more than I did. Like he said, I didn't dispense it enough. I was too afraid to show mercy, maybe because I thought it wasn't going to get me anywhere. I don't want to end my life that way. I want to feel like I risked it all as much as possible. And then he says this. He says, blessed are those who are pure in heart. And now sometimes people read this and they stamp the morality stamp on it, right? Say, oh, this is about morality. This isn't about moral purity. This is about a singleness of heart, a single-mindedness, not perfection, but this idea that God says blessed are those that have a pure heart, and Jesus is obviously saying a pure heart towards God and God's ways. A philosophy writer, Soren Kierkegaard, used to say that to have a pure heart is to will one thing, is just to be like, this is the one thing. And Jesus is basically saying, the one thing, if you can just focus on God's heart, God's love, God's mercy, God's grace, all the other things fall into place. It's like taking a photo with your iPhone on portrait. Anyone do this? So you put it in portrait mode, and then you touch the thing that you want in focus, and then everything becomes blurry in the photo except the thing that you touched. That's what Jesus is kind of saying here. He's inviting us to have our heart just totally focused on what God's heart is focused on, which we should know is loving God and loving our neighbor. And then everything else in the picture can get blurry, and it's okay. Am I the only one that uses portrait mode? Is it passé? Yeah. It's pretty cool on my phone. I like it. Anyway. And then we only have 2 left. But this is my favorite. And Jesus says, blessed are those who make peace. I love the idea of being challenged to work for right relationships at the expense of my comfort, or if you're saying it, you're working towards right relationships at the expense of your comfort. There's work to this. We are architects of peace. We are manufacturers of peace. And anyone that makes anything in here, if you're a contractor, if you make food, it takes time and it takes planning. Like, I'm the worst cook in the world, but if I follow a recipe, I can get there, right? And I'm gonna make this item. My kids think I'm the worst, but they're actually way better than I am now. But it's amazing. It takes time and it takes effort. But at the end, you have something. When you're building something, when you're redoing somebody's basement, when you're renovating a kitchen, you just blow it all up, and there's this plan, and it gets there. If you're roasting coffee, sorry, I'm about to point you out, there is a plan, and then at the end of the plan is that someone eventually makes this coffee, and you drink it, and you're like, yes, the espresso I was looking for, right? They're back to the food thing. This is the same thing. Jesus is like, blessed are you if you think so highly of peace, and it's such a high value, that you will strategically plan to create, architect, make, produce peace around you. Now, don't mistake peacemaker for a peacekeeper. A peacekeeper says nothing while they're fuming inside, right? They just don't want, I don't want to mess up this conversation, so I'm not going to say anything, even though a justice button was pressed and they're just feeling something. A peacekeeper stays silent while a friend or a colleague speaks poorly about somebody else, but they don't want to mess with the peace, so they don't say anything. So they don't bring up maybe the problem with their boss or with their superior or with the person, because it's just like, no, I don't want to mess this up. A peacekeeper often avoids conflict so that nobody gets upset. Any peacekeepers here? You don't have to put your hand up, but yeah, just a little bit, right? But a peacemaker does what needs to be done to make peace. They create peace. They manufacture peace. They produce peace. And sometimes there's a little bit of a mess in the process. Back to contracting. There's always a mess before you see the finished product, right? The kitchen is sometimes a mess, but then you eat this beautiful food, right? And so Jesus says, your blessed life, you're going to have a blessed life if you take the time and the effort and the strategy and the thinking and the heart to make peace around you, to produce it. And then this leads us to the last one. We're almost done. Jesus says, blessed are those who are persecuted. Because sometimes when you work for peace, you also get the side eye a little bit. Because it's like, hey, they're like ruffling the feathers here. What's going on, right? Because when we work towards justice, we may get into some trouble. I've quoted Tony Campolo here a bunch of times. The late Tony Campolo. He passed away a couple years ago. He was arrested 87 times in his life. I love it. Because he's just like, oh, this is not right. I gotta, and peaceful, hey, I don't agree with this. Okay, we're gonna put you in jail 87 times. He says he knew how to get out of handcuffs. That's how many times he was put in jail. And then he shared some stories about like who he was put in jail with. So like just some amazing people. because he was working towards peace. He was working to make something right. He was working for the vulnerable in the world or for the people that were not thought about. And that's what happened. And when we work towards making things right in the world, we may run into some opposition. It might happen. Jesus says actually it will happen. But when we live out some of these subversive ways of Jesus, we're going to hit some resistance. But in the end, the world's going to be better for it. Like if you look back at history, the folks that were determined and said, no, this is not right. This person's being mistreated, or this group of people, they should be cared for and loved, or whatever. They suffered for it. But the world was better for it in the end. So Jesus is just telling us, listen, you're going to be blessed, but it doesn't mean you're not going to feel any heat. It's going to happen. Yeah. So my take home is this. The smallest bit of honesty, the smallest bit of gentleness, the smallest desire for justice, the smallest bit of mercy, the smallest work towards peace, these will all make a difference in the world. The ripple effect from these Jesus practices will bring, and they do bring, change. Yeah, they do. And what's so cool about the Beatitudes is that they're two-sided. So one side is our posture. So this is the prayer side. This is why I think we should read it. So I want to be a person of peace. It's my posture. I want to be a person of mercy. I want to be a person of gentleness. I want to be a person that hungers and thirsts for righteousness, my posture. But then it affects my practice. Then it just flows out into the world. And so whoever you're dealing with, whoever you're talking to, if it's your neighbor, coworker, family, your child, your mom, your spouse, the peace starts to dribble out and it starts to come out there, and the gentleness starts to impact your relationships. And it's so beautiful, but it's both of those things. That's why today was a little bit different. It was like we need to see this as a prayer practice that leads to a life practice. So it's a prayer practice to say like, oh God, remind me that blessed are the pure in heart. Remind me, God, that blessed are the poor in spirit. Remind me, God, that blessed are those who make peace. And I want to be that person. And then in turn, God says, all right, go and be that person. Go and live out that life. Go and let it just kind of flow in all the things that you do. So we're going to end with just a prayer that reflects the Beatitudes. So the purpose of today was to really say, like, use this text, use these Beatitudes, this central, huge, important teaching of Jesus as a go-to for you, as a practice. And then let it get under your skin, into your heart, into your mind, into your home, so that it just kind of keeps seeping out of you. So the prayer is actually going to be on the screen. So you can read it, or you can close your eyes and just kind of take it in. So let's close with prayer. Jesus, may I recognize that while I am fearfully and wonderfully made by my Creator, I am also in desperate need of that same Creator. May I never shy away from lament and grief. Instead, may I be honest with what's going on inside of me on good days or hard days. God, help me bring gentleness into every room that I walk into, and to trust that gentleness is stronger than others think it is. Of all the things I desire and hunger, may I hunger for things that make this world right and make this world good. Give me, Jesus, a heart of mercy, a heart that looks like your heart. And help me to focus on the things that matter. May I be someone who builds and creates peace, even if it comes with some risk. And finally, give me the strength to endure resistance to my efforts towards justice. Remind me that I am in good company, because I'm in your company. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen. Thanks for listening. A little different, but thank you so much. Yeah. Peace be with you. We can be a little Anglican today. Peace be with you. There we go. Okay, we got a few. Beautiful. Okay, have a wonderful day. Pray for our run on Saturday if you're helping. Thank you. And back on Sunday morning. You don't want to miss Haley Tolson. It's going to be great. Peace. Love. Bye.